Good evening and welcome back. My name is Matthew McLaughlin.
And I'm Daniel Sandner.
And we have some notes for
Pride and Prejudice.
The romantic movie that I thought was all just mush and love when I was a kid. Watched it once a few years ago and completely fell in love with it.
Absolutely.
We were very fortunate enough that the 20th anniversary just happened of this movie, and they re-released it in theaters. So we were at Allen Theaters today, and we just rewatched the whole thing on the big screen. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I was just having a great time. The whole movie. If there was one thing I had to say about this, it was that it was a cinema lover's feast. For me, watching this, the way the characters interacted, the set design, the colors, the story, everything... Sorry, Coda. Everything about it was just pure cinema to me. Absolutely everything about it. And that's where I want to start.
Okay. I'm not going to lie. I was surprised when we were picking a movie and that this was something that came up. It's a movie I haven't seen since high school. I remembered being really bored in high school. I had to read the book. And I was like, all right, maybe give it another go. Substantially better than I remembered it being. I remembered being really bored. And it's just watching it again, and on the big screen's always fun. Just a super intelligently written movie, super well acted, great cast. And like you said, it has a lot of really just solid elements that, cater to a fun story. And it just was hi buddy. It was just a good time. Absolutely. So yeah, what do you say? Because you say it's a cinema goer's feast. Why is that?
Yeah, this is a cinema goer's feast because, well, let me explain something. We missed the first 10 minutes. The reason why is totally fine. Daniel happened to come across a scooter rider who had crashed on his way to the theater, and I had the tickets, so I had to wait for him. So the reason why we missed the first 10 minutes is no big problem. But I remember at the end of the movie, this is one of the few movies where I'm sitting there, and it's 2.5 hours, and I wish that I had seen the first 10 minutes. No blame, just so you know. But it really left me at the end of the theater after the experience, just watching it and being so grateful to have seen something like this. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the first 10 minutes from the last time you saw it? Because I honestly don't.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes are basically, you see the relationship between Lizzie and her sisters. And if I remember correctly, we hopped in right when Darcy enters the room and it's all quiet, which is hilarious, walking into a theater at the quietest moment of the movie. But anyway.
We entered with stoicism just like Mr. Darcy.
We are Darcy.
We are Darcy.
So they're talking basically bad about Darcy. They take his, what everybody thinks of him, the opinions that they formed about him, the prejudice that they hold against him in the first 10 minutes. It's all the character setup is in those first 10 minutes. So I definitely wish that we would have seen it, but the movie does such a good job of showing everything and demonstrating it that we were still able to pick up on pretty much everything.
Not a beat missed, honestly. I mean, it's not one of those movies where if you miss the first 10 minutes, you're like, okay, who are these people and what are they doing? And we missed the story of someone's birth and why they were, explained to be whatever. No, this movie is just such a good, not even slow burner, like it keeps pace, but it's such a good, building movie, just start to finish that.
The fact that we got in 10 minutes and we had already missed a ton of exposition just shows how well told the story is.
Absolutely.
To be honest.
One that every minute is important.
Every minute is important.
There's no
everything that
extra
happens,
weight to shed.
Yeah, it has something to do with something else in the movie, with a character, with something that's going on. Every beat in this movie is important, and that's why I love it so much. First thing that I'd like to talk about is purely the cinematography.
Sure.
Gorgeous. Absolutely stunning. I mean, I was sitting there and just in awe of every single camera move, making sense for the situation, helping the plot along, and seeing the transitions. Like one that I remember in particular is that Lizzie's character, she has a feather in her hand, and the scene is ending, and she just blows on the feather,
Like so. Allow me to demonstrate.
Yeah, she blows on the feather, and then the scene cuts to the ball that they've already established is happening, and right where the feather is, there's fire. So the sound transitions, and you're right into the next scene. It's just so thoughtful, so well executed. I loved every single moment. I mean, there's not much else to say besides that. The cinematography was perfect. When there was order to be had, the entire shot was symmetrical. When there was chaos going on, it was panning and following characters, and they were going crazy. And when they needed to have a change of character, it might be steady again and a wide angle. Yeah, it was absolutely every single shot could be framed in a photo.
Interesting. Yeah. I feel that, but for a different reason. I don't think I liked it because it was simple, not because it was pretty. I didn't think that. Hi, buddy. I didn't think that.
Sorry, Bobo.
We have extra guests this episode. I thought that at first when I was watching it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of dull. The colors were not popping, nothing was very outstanding about it. But as the movie went on, and especially in the scene that we walked in on, they were having where, I don't know exactly where they were, but when Mr. Darcy was introduced and they were at a ball or some sort of event, just how much of a fly on the wall the camera was in this entire movie, that you were in these intimate moments like a third person in the conversation, but not done cinematically. Like it was almost it reinforcing the kind of gossip that was going on, the conversations, behind closed doors. And to the point that you made, I think halfway through the movie, there's just this amazing scene where it starts off. I don't remember exactly where it starts, but it's entirely a Steadicam shot, and it just goes from character to character. It moves through the hallways. It goes from object to object. It racks focus from characters walking up to a character sitting on a bench, and the whole thing is it's like 4 minutes or something like that, and it's a oneer. But it guides you through the scene so well that you're just floating through all of this drama that's happening. And it's so effective for what's happening and for, what the characters are saying and what they're thinking and the multi conversations that are going on. Like, I mean, even ones that are more intimate where there's the two ladies like under the bed sheets and you're like jammed in there with them, and they don't compromise any of the intimacy for the camera, that you're 100% a fly on the wall the whole movie. And then moments like you mentioned, where it does change, styles, like you'll jump into handheld stuff, or the nice lockdown symmetrical shots where it's the four ladies on the couch and her all the way to the right on the other couch. You could tell that it was very informing of the storyline, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Like, it was very intelligent cinematography, which was great.
That oneer that you're talking about, that one take shot in the party, I can't really think of a oneer that made so much sense for the movie and that you don't even realize is a oneer.
You're totally engaged with them, yeah.
You're totally engaged the entire time. Everybody has a story plot going on. Everybody has something going on in this house party, whether you really know the character, whether they matter a crazy bunch. And they're also able to show almost every emotion that you would expect there to be at a party. You have people trying to hook up with other people. You have happiness. You have sadness. You have embarrassment. You have all of this. And then it ends with contemplation and wondering what's going to happen next.
Very true.
They can show all of those emotions with a one take, showing all of it.
Yeah.
And the logistics of the blocking,
oh my gosh,
need to be studied.
Yes. Well, so they, at the end of the day, they let the actors act, and the camera never took away from that. Like, it allowed them, like, it didn't cut. It just let them do their thing. The blocking thing, I'm glad you brought that up. The dance sequence where she first dances with Mr. Darcy.
And before, blocking is just simply where they place the characters and how the camera is moving with them. Effectively, how the camera dances with the actors that are on screen. That's what blocking is.
So when she first asked Mr. Darcy to dance, that entire sequence was phenomenal because it was shot completely down the line of people. It was an unbroken, 5 or 6 minute dialogue piece. And I thought that exact same thing with the blocking, where the camera was simply just panning back and forth. It was a little bit loose. I don't know if it was locked down necessarily, but it was shot through the crowd. I mean, you were witnessing this conversation through a crowd of people, and it was buried within the crowd of people, which was awesome. But every time they would change sides, like the camera had to choose a side to follow, for the character that was talking at the time or whatever the case may be. And then the minute they'd get back into center and they would exchange that conversation, the camera would pan to the next side or follow a specific character. And that's exactly what came to mind. I'm like, dude, they would have had to coordinate the heck out of this scene to know exactly where they needed to be, where they'd be back in frame to pass that conversational torch to the next person, or when they were going to come up in frame or back in frame when people were going to block them. It was just so naturally done. Like, it was so well rehearsed. and then so well executed because they didn't have to cut. They didn't have to do 300 different cuts. It just was this nice flowing sequence in and amongst the whole dance scene. It was so cool.
You know how people who have a lot of success in life might be called an overnight success, but it's just all, when people call them that, it's just ignoring the years and years of hard work that it took to get them to that successful point.
Absolutely.
That, I gotta believe, is the same thing with that scene. It looks like it's just effortless and natural because they must have put a ton of blocking, like what Coda just did, into it and practiced it for months and months leading up. Yeah. There's no way you get away with something like this by happenstance. Everything moved naturally, and that was definitely the culmination of that practice. But the idea of framing and blocking stuck throughout the movie. There's one quick scene that happened later in the movie when Darcy and Lizzie, they are at Darcy's estate. And it's when they see each other and they're really awkward and Lizzie has to leave. Well, she leaves and the camera just goes alongside her, and then she goes down the stairs and it ends on Darcy's empty hand.
Yep.
Perfectly as her head dips below.
Yeah, it was so good.
There were so many moments like that. And when I say it's a feast for a cinematographer, I was sitting there and just eating it up. This is not just an ooey-gooey romantic throwaway movie, some chick flick or something like that. It's
a very intelligent, very thoughtful movie.
This really, really is.
Yeah.
And we should all be taking notes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we can come back to the cinematography notes when we do the rating. There were a couple things I would have done differently.
Sure, well, let's talk about it, because there were actually two that I wouldn't mind talking about when it came to the cinematography.
Okay.
And what it relates to with our business. So, number one was that probably the most intense scene, if I would have to say, was when it was raining and Mr. Darcy and Lizzie are at that, not a cathedral, but it was a small place where they had intimacy and privacy after Lizzie finds out that Mr. Darcy had basically betrayed her family. In that scene, Lizzie is in focus. Mr. Darcy is not.
Yeah.
Now, that's an interesting thing because it's a total screw-up. It's a total screw-up. There is no excuse for that being a creative decision. With how thoughtfully the entire movie is played out, this was a screw-up. Now, let me get into the next point, and I'll make kind of the point about how it relates to what we do. The other thing that I noticed with this movie is, especially in the party scenes where it was darker, the noise was nuts. Not the loudness, the noise to the ears.
Yeah, camera noise.
But the noise of the image on screen. Basically, it looks all pixelated, kind of, is what noise is for those of you who don't know. This had a ton of noise in a lot of the movie. And it was distracting to somebody who knows what you're looking for, just like the out-of-focus character was distracting. Now, what I'll say for that is that, did I lose any emotion with the scenes? Hell no. I didn't lose a single minute. I had, cinematographer brain, there it is. And then I went back to audience member and I was like, holy crap, dude, this is amazing what I'm watching. And the noise was there. I was like, okay, cinematographer brain, yep, there's noise. But look what's happening in front of me. And it's just a reminder to me that what matters most is the story. What matters most is what happens on screen and the story going forward. The noise and everything, we try to eliminate as much as we possibly can. And we try to nail focus absolutely every single time. But sometimes an actor is going to do some magic and you might be out of focus and it doesn't matter. And that's what I would say about those two scenes is, for me, if you can get some magic caught on screen, put it in there. Even if there is one technical flaw, put it in there, because that is better than the flawed acting where it's technically perfectly shot.
Fair enough. Okay. I definitely did notice the out of focus thing. I was honestly focused on the fact that it was only raining in the foreground and it wasn't dripping off the building, but that's a whole nother side of weird focusing. Yeah, I agree. If the performance is right, you'll put in the shot that works. And this is obviously a performance-based film that, the technical stuff just has to get out of the way sometimes. To the grainy stuff, there was one particular shot that caught my attention. It was where I don't remember his name. I know him as the guy from Pirates of the Caribbean, the short guy, the pastor, the preacher guy. When he was Collins,
Mr. Collins.
yeah, when he was getting out of his carriage and coming into the building, and there was a oneer of that entire sequence, and it went from super dark outside, flame lit, only a little bit of artificial moonlight, and then he came into the room, and then it was now a new setting. Was where it was most apparent. But honestly, I was just marveling at the fact that the set design was ultimately where the cinematography was allowed to be as good as it was, because the majority of these scenes, especially the big party scenes, which are you're coordinating hundreds of extras in a large room, dancing a camera around in it. How the heck do you light that to where you can just have freedom? And then especially with a period piece where it's already so hard to light it well because you're doing candlelight and you're doing moonlight, you're doing all this stuff. I liked those moments where they suffered a little bit because it brought the actual feeling of authenticity of the scene back. And I don't know, maybe it was shot on film too. It kind of looked like it was, and for 2004 maybe. But
yeah, I looked it up. I forgot to look up more details, but in the theater I actually Googled it, and it was an Aricam ST is what they shot it on.
Okay.
I know nothing about that camera, but that's the camera.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one.
And Cook lenses.
Cook lenses? What was the
S4?
format? Was it 35 millimeter?
I don't know, but it said S4 Cook lenses. This was the fastest Google search on the planet.
Fair enough. But the moral of the story there is I appreciated the fact that because of the good set design, because of the good DP, lighting efficiently, lighting with good intention, that nothing was where those moments suffered. Certainly, yeah, you'd notice, but like at the end of the day, it allowed the camera to have the fun that it needed to have, especially for those big sequences or for the outdoor sequences. Like honestly, the most egregious sequence I found for the cinematography was actually the big end sequence where her and Darcy come together and profess their love out in the field, because the whole time he's cloaked in sunlight from behind, and then it cuts to her and she's like pitch black, and you look at his outline on the other side, he's same thing, and you could tell that they shot them in completely different times and then they came together. Not to mention the amount of time it took him to walk to her, I thought was comical, but whatever.
I disagree with you. I love that scene.
Really?
I
Well, because
really
the
love
music
that
is
scene.
swelling and he's just walking for like 20 seconds. And
Yeah,
like
it shows her disbelief of what's happening before
right,
her.
but it doesn't show her until after the swelling is done. It's like 20 seconds of him just like ambling up the field, and then it cuts to her after the swelling is done, and then he's suddenly there, and then there's the weird lighting thing. But
I like the lighting. It was a sunrise. It was showing the beginning of the new relationship.
right, but not on her face. It wasn't. Her face was completely
they were both
dark.
shot there in the same spot for sure.
Hers was definitely earlier or later because she was dark. When you looked at the reflections in her eyes, he was dark.
Oh, okay, because it looked totally natural.
But
to
he
me.
was cloaked in sunlight, and so he was a lot warmer than she was. She was this kind of blue, maybe intentional. I don't know, but whatever. In terms of cinematography, but I think my only other gripe, generally speaking, with cinematography was the use of zoom lenses. I'm glad they're using Zeiss lenses. That's awesome. But there were moments, like I understood why. I just don't know if that's what I would have done. It felt very early 2000s because you could tell that it brought you into the drama in certain moments, and that was great. It gave it kind of the MTV style living in the moment, I want to say. But some of it was weird, and the use of it fell off drastically as the movie went on. Like in the early scenes, it was very apparent. And the only other time I really noticed it later in the movie was when she was talking with her father, and it was like randomly jittering in
random
a little bit closer to her.
That was weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I get it. I think it was cool. I think it was a little bit of an artifact of its time because that was definitely a little more common there to do that kind of style. Did it hurt the movie? No. Was it intentional? Yes. So at the end of the day, it's just I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah,
But
and that's funny because I really liked it because I think we see no crash zooms except for in Django.
there, you know what? The crash zoom to Darcy was really funny.
There's some really funny moments.
Yeah.
There's the crash zooms that they used were funny, and then they were serious, and then there was a realization, and then there was the use of zoom in this movie. I actually really appreciated because it's just like we were talking about this a little while ago about how we need to use specific moves very intentionally when we're on set to make sure that we're portraying the right emotion with it. Whether it's a pan to show somebody moving around a car, whether it's a push in to show some realization, or this movie, a zoom to show that they have a realization of something. it really helped me see different aspects where a zoom could be used and it not to make the scene cheesy.
See, and yet I think that because we have gone through, especially watching like TV shows like The Office or things like that, where it becomes the idea of crash zooms, especially, are more attested to reality TV, and so it feels a little bit like Desperate Housewives territory to me. Not to say that in this particular case it like cheapened it. Like I said, I think it was totally intentional, and I understood what they were going for. I just don't know if I would have chosen it. I think that had they turned it down or used it half as much, maybe it would have been better. But I don't know. It just was an interesting choice. Not a bad choice, just an interesting choice. Maybe not one I would have chosen, but
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I like it. Daniel doesn't like it. That's okay. That's why we watch movies.
well, so other things that this movie did well. Writing was impeccable.
Writing was insane.
Much more riveting than I remember the book being, but I was, again, also in high school. So I don't remember the book being that good, but like, damn, this movie is just very, very, very well written.
You are able to comprehend what's being said, but yet if you put yourself in a mood to be able to tune it up a little bit to where you can really pay attention to what's said is so much deeper than what you initially feel just as a relaxed viewer. So I encourage anybody who's watching it, dive into it with I'm going to pay attention brain, like hardcore.
Yeah.
Because the writing deserves your attention.
Well, and a testament to the actors for actually understanding what they're talking about. It's sort of like when you see really good Shakespearean actors, they're really good because they understand what's being said. They're not just reciting lines and pretending that they know, but like they know what they're saying and they're reacting to what they're saying and what's being said to them. And every single character in this movie fully understood not only their own characters and who they were inside and out, but exactly what they were saying in the period talk, which is just so also refreshing. It just makes it so much more believable from an audience perspective because it can be very cheesy, but it's not in this case. It's
No.
very intentional and very intelligent.
Very intentional, and it doesn't detract from anybody's character.
No, it totally enhances it.
So good. This is a movie where I'm not a writer, and I will blatantly admit that. But this was a movie where it's like the realization why there are dedicated writers. This movie made that very apparent to me.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a dedicated writer who is extremely intelligent and emotionally invested in the project, you're not going to get anywhere near this level.
Yeah.
You have to have good source material. You have to have a dedicated writer. You have to have
Who
people,
understands and utilizes the source material well.
Yeah, and they have to be emotionally invested to make sure that this happens. And that's what it brought across to me. The writing, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Seriously. Can you think of any other movies that really compare in this writing?
In different ways. I just think there's something to be said about a period piece like this that is so heavily reliant on not only witty, but just such complex dialogue that it's, it really is like Shakespeare level in that way. And I mean, again, it was written, I think, early 1800s was when the book came out. And so like it's been popular for a long time for good reason, because I think the original source material was great. I mean, I don't love all Jane Eyre books, but this was, from what I remember, again, high school, this is one of the better ones. I don't know. In terms of one right off the bat, I don't have one right this second, but this one's definitely up there.
Yeah, I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure there are some, but yeah, I just can't think of any at the moment.
You just, like you said, have to have a full understanding of everything you're talking about to write a script like this and really know your stuff, do your research, talk to the right people, really understand it through and through. And they did.
So we've talked about what we've seen with our eyes. We've talked about what we've heard with our ears. Now we have to talk about the people that actually made that happen. The actors. The casting was nuts. For whatever reason, every single time I first see Mr. Darcy, I don't get why he was cast. And then and to his credit, and for this particular character, the deeper we go into the movie, the more I'm like, oh, okay.
Great stone face, yep.
He just builds the entire time. And that's how Lizzie perceives him too. So as an audience member, yeah, I didn't buy the casting. To me, I don't want to be mean or anything, but as far as like handsome leading men go, I don't think he's there. But I think that might do it credit because he doesn't give that impression right off the bat. He's not bad looking or anything, but he builds throughout the entire thing. And at the end, you're like, well, of course they're together. Look at what he did. Look what he was able to accomplish and what a man that guy is for her and her family.
Yeah. In a movie with
Amazing
so many
casting.
pretty people, it gives us not pretty people hope. No, we can still get the girl. Well, so there were a couple things I thought on the casting side of things. Absolutely, yes. Everyone who was cast did phenomenally. I still have a hard time getting past the casting because this was the same time as Pirates of the Caribbean, and you have Keira Knightley being cast as another Elizabeth in this movie as opposed to Elizabeth Swann in the other movie. She's a great actress. I have such a hard time with her underbite, but she's great in this one. It's good. It's all good. And then you
At
have...
least it's not Snow White bad with the underbite.
Oh my gosh. Don't stab me. It's like, you're going to do something you're going to regret. Freaking, yeah. But her and was great. And then the preacher guy whose name I forget again.
Mr. Collins.
Yeah. Again, another Pirates thing. So it's fun
Who
to
is
see
he in
that.
Pirates?
He's the leader of the East India Trading Company. He's the guy who puts Davy Jones like under a contract in the second and third movie.
I
don't remember his name.
Is
right
he
off the top of my
actually
head.
that short?
I don't know, but it's hilarious because it's this Napoleon complex that you get to deal with. Yeah, he's a funny character. I love it. But and he plays it so well. But just seeing because these happened at the exact same times in the decade, who were like the hot ticket actors of the time. And so everyone clearly knew their characters and they embellished on their characters. They were hammy when they needed to be. Like the mother is hilarious and Donald Sutherland's hilarious. They're all great. The one thing that kills me though, and this is across all movies, not just this movie, is any time there is a movie that portrays siblings, familial relationships, that kind of thing. I always give it such kudos to the casting director when they can get people that at least kind of look alike. Because in this one, they're all, five sisters, none of which look alike. Jane kind of looks like the mom, kinda. She's close. But all the rest of them are just completely different looking. And it's not a movie killer. I just find it funny. And kudos to the casting directors who really try to make them look the same. That would be my one gripe with casting in this movie. But other than that, to your point with Darcy, perfect. A stone-faced, not necessarily traditionally handsome guy. Again, I can't talk, but not traditionally handsome. And yet just so complex in the ways that it needs to be, that they all were absolutely serving to their arcs. They were all interesting in their own way and were allowed to embellish on their characters. They all understood their own characters through and through, and it made it fun. It made it funny. It made it, charming.
I love the fact, too, that they let the mom have the 2 lines of dialogue where it's Lizzie and she asks her mom, do you think of anything except for your 5 daughters getting married? And she's like, when you have 5 daughters, is there anything else you'll be thinking about?
Agreed.
And I love that.
That's such a great character-defining line.
It's so funny. It's character-defining. And it just, there's no undercutting of her. Mm-hmm. Of her flip-flops make sense. Because that all she cares about is that.
Yep.
So her flip-flops and motivations or whatever, it totally makes sense. And I love that they put that in there.
Exactly. And even when Judi Dench shows up in the middle of the night and they're all rustled awake, that's all she's thinking about. Well, she just got engaged and she's
selling.
Turn it off.
Boom, boom.
Oh, it's so funny. It's so good. So yeah, the characters are great. The writing's great. Cinematography's great. What else is great? Gosh, it's all good.
Chemistry. That's a big one. If you're talking about any romantic movie, you have to talk about chemistry.
Fair.
And in this movie, I don't even want to talk about Lizzie and Mr. Darcy because, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
They're
the chemistry was nuts.
Complex and
yeah.
yo-yoing back and forth.
But the chemistry, even between, it wasn't Wilkins. What was that guy's name, the soldier? Was it Wilkins?
It was Wilkins.
It was Wilkins.
It was Wilkins.
Wilkins and Lizzie, where they were flirting. Even that had chemistry. And then when he's walking through and the goofy sisters that don't want to do anything with their lives are like admiring him and then giggling. It's like there's chemistry with everybody.
Absolutely.
Between Lizzie and her dad at the end of the movie, where all his concern is her happiness. And his concerns go out the window until she's happy. And he starts crying at the end. I mean, it wasn't forced. He looked like a proud father that was in disbelief that his precious child, finally was able to have something to set her up for life. And not only set her up for life, but make sure that she was happy in life. And the chemistry between everybody was just nuts. Even Mr. Collins, his chemistry of
He's
just
hilarious.
it's funny because I say chemistry. His lack of chemistry fit the character so well, and it was hilarious.
His lack of social cues and his just general awkwardness. It's so funny, and it is his like unspoken, untapped chemistry between him and the youngest daughter, and her like kind of being like, oh, this is a cool guy because they're both socially awkward and not members, black sheep in their families. Yeah, I agree. It's really, really good, and kudos to any casting department who can do that and who can be like, well, this is a star power that is good right now that we want to try to get. Will they work together? It's true. Well, in terms of notes, is that all the good stuff you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. In terms of notes, I know the cinematography snafus were the only things that I really had. What was the other thing? I don't remember what the other thing was. Very few notes, I guess, is my side of things. I hadn't forgotten. I realized how good of a movie this was since last I saw it in high school, and it was refreshing to see it again. It's just such a joyous movie that is just so much fun to watch. And at the end of the day, like it's a good testament to the book in positive ways. Good thing to revisit. I don't know. I don't have many notes. Do you have any notes?
This is going to be telling of my scores. Besides trying to hit focus, I got nothing. I truly have no notes on this movie. The fact that you called it a romantic comedy earlier in the day, and when I saw that, I was like, I don't remember it being romantic comedy. I remember it being romantic. When we started watching it, I was like, there are funny jokes in this.
It is a laugh out loud movie like the whole time.
Yeah, it absolutely. There's funniness and there's seriousness, and you feel all these emotions going through the entire story. So while rom-com is technically accurate, it does so much more. It does so much more. So it's accurate, but I would say not to call it that, only because it does so much more than what we perceive rom-coms to be.
They've become cheap.
Yeah, they have.
You could tell that this one was the standard. That there's a reason this one has stood the test of time as long as it has, and why tropes have come out of it. That this is the OG, and there's a reason that it's the OG.
There's a reason why we saw it on the 20th anniversary theater re-release, and we won't be seeing any other rom-coms in that sense.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm curious to know, do you know of other, I know there are other adaptations of this, but I'd be curious to see them. Do you know of any other off the top of your head?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
I'd love to see, because this one, I mean, it's sort of like this was the popular time where I think Romeo and Juliet got remade at this time, like 2005 with Leonardo DiCaprio. Like there was a kind of a resurgence of old material in this way. And I'd be interested to see how this one stacks up to other adaptations. I'm sure they exist. I'd like to think they do, but I'm going to look into it more. So to see if they're just as effective, So shall we do scores?
Let's do scores. So every week we give a score out of 5 for every movie that we watch. You can see that score on Letterboxd. You can follow us on Letterboxd at OTW Video. And right now we're going to go to our scores, and we'll be back like that. So we're finished with our scores, and let's get into it. Mr. Daniel, for uniqueness, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd give it a 4.5. I mean, like I said, this is kind of the OG rom-com, if we're using that. And there's a reason it's the OG. It's effective. It's unique. I mean, it's harder to watch it from a lens nowadays because we've seen so many that have done so much worse. But, looking back at it, appreciating the source material for what it is, and then especially with this 2004 adaptation, it's, I think, pretty good. It's unique. So how about for you?
Exactly 4.5.
Excellent.
The only reason it's not a 5 is simply because it comes from source material. Now, I'm on the fence of if that should
So do you grade the movie unique even from the source material, or just the story and concept in general as unique? Because you said because it comes from source material.
Right. I feel like I have seen it's not medieval, but European love stories before. This type of love story where it comes from, to quote the name of the book in the movie, from a place of pride and a place of prejudice, I haven't seen that. So very unique, but it also comes from a book. So I'm on the fence if that's a real knock against it, but I feel like 4.5 is the right score for this. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, mostly. I guess the side I come from is that, like, the story itself, the story structure is much older than, even because this movie follows the story structure pretty closely, that it is an older story. And so like things like it didn't necessarily come before it. Like it was a pioneering story. I guess that's where I come from, is that because of the source material, it gets the higher score. So that's interesting to know. So, okay, what have you got for cinematography?
Cinematography is a flat out 5.
Okay.
I mentioned that there are 2 technical problems, which one is just of the camera, which for the time digital cameras for cinema were fairly new. And they missed the focus on that one scene. But the reason I'm sticking to a 5 is because of the other scores, basically. Those flaws didn't matter for the story. Those flaws didn't matter for the movie. Those flaws don't matter. Therefore, the fact the rest of the cinematography is so amazing, so impeccable for the storytelling, and just, like I called it, a feast for the eyes. Yeah, I have no complaints. It was astonishing.
Good. Okay. I have some complaints, which is why I give it a 4. The zoom lens thing was distracting. Again, it was their choice. I appreciated it at least had intention, but like I wouldn't have necessarily gone there. And I always like movies, especially ones that have the kind of levity that this one had throughout most of it, to be a little more colorful, to be a little bit brighter. It felt definitely a little more drab. It didn't have to be punchy, but it definitely lacked some vibrance that I appreciate for movies like this. So just for my personal side of it, I wouldn't give it quite perfect, but definitely really good. So
what would you give it for the story?
The story, I would give it a 5. It's just such a well-crafted story. I mean, every character matters. They're all explored very, very well. And in this particular movie, they're all acted very well. The Steadicam scenes where they're navigating through these wonders of there's so many individual beats going on between all these individual characters, and yet you care about every single one of them. They're all important. And there's something to be said for movies that can juggle so many characters so well. And tell compelling stories for each of them. So, solid 5. It's a really good story.
Story's a 5. Where I can go to a movie and feel all of these different emotions, the story has to be a 5. That means that they pulled it off, which is a different category, but that means that the story itself, the bones were there, and they did such a good job with it. So the story is absolutely a 5. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, well, tell me how they executed it then.
Executed at 5. There's nothing wrong with their execution. This was absolutely perfect. One thing that we didn't talk about at all, which we will at the next category. Actually, it's funny. I'm just going a little bit ahead of myself. But this is 2.5 hours. Mm-hmm. This is a, rom-com we've already established is the wrong term. But this is a 2.5 hour rom-com. Besides Hitch, I can't think of anything else that keeps me that interested. And it was so interesting. The execution was amazing. I was getting goosebumps the entire time. I was feeling different things. They pulled it off. And that's why it gets a 5.
Excellent. All right. I didn't give it quite a 5. A couple things. I mean, there were obviously the couple little like technical snafus that we noticed. Again, those really don't matter because the acting was so still behind it. But a couple things where... like for me, I was actually wondering a lot of the movie, what the heck do these guys do even for a living? Because there's this chasing between man and woman where Darcy suddenly just shows up randomly at another, like, travel time and all this. They're just constantly like in front of each other that I'm like, what do these guys do for work? And like, how is any of that never discussed? It's entirely in the throes of love throughout the whole movie, which is fine for what the movie is. But those little questions of just like, what the heck are they doing? Where I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe that was addressed and I missed it. That's totally possible.
I think it's also a culture thing. Like
yeah, probably.
They mentioned that he has, what was it? It was funny. She was blaming him for his wealth. Well, we can't go see him because he's rich or whatever. And the guy blatantly said, he was like, you can't blame him for his wealth. He can't help it. Mm-hmm. That was fair. Funny to us.
That's fair.
So it's got to be
it's probably a critique on the culture then. Yeah. Either way, it's something that, could be addressed in all of the multiple words that are said in this movie. There's certain little other things that I mentioned before, but like by no means is it not poorly it is well executed. So I don't think it's absolute perfection, but it is definitely very, very close. So, all right, what you got? Oh, I asked you about. Go for it. I'm jumping ahead here.
No worries. Immersion. How immersed were you?
Well, if execution said anything about it, almost there. I was a little bit kind of wiped out today, so I did check my watch, but that wasn't because the movie was boring. Just other things on the mind. So in terms of immersion, I mean, the set pieces are phenomenal. The dances are really well executed. Of course, the acting's amazing. The writing's really good, and it keeps you in there. Like everything matters in this movie. There's not frivolous stuff. So it's very intentional. So I think in the case of immersion, it's because of that, I give it a 4.5. I'm not super duper locked in. Like this wouldn't be a movie I'd watch every year necessarily, but like when I do, I'm in it, you know.
For me, it was a 5. I was sitting there and
giggling your pants off.
I was having such a good time. I really was. I was laughing. I didn't get all the way to crying, but you feel those emotions watching this movie. You feel sadness and you feel hope and you feel all of these things. You know, something that I keep thinking about is that the symbol for theater is a sad mask and a happy mask. And what I've taken that to mean in our world, in our profession, is that whenever we have something that is narrative-based, we have to show a contrast of emotions. We have to show a difference. And this movie does such a good job with it that I was immersed the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Showed the comedy and the tragedy.
You gotta show all of it.
Absolutely.
The last one, emotional connection.
Mm-hmm. I gave it a 4, and it's not to say that I wasn't emotionally connected. There's definitely a part of it where, you know, I'm not a part of any sort of affluent family who's trying to marry in and out of things, but like we all understand on a very intimate basis interpersonal connections with love and, you know, trying to find the perfect person for yourself and all of that. I mean, granted, this has a lot more of the cultural aspect of it too, which is really fascinating. And so I connected with it, certainly. At the end of the day, it was a really fun movie to me. And so I wouldn't say that I definitely had like some close to tearing up moments, but like almost there. Good. Like definitely close, but yeah, I give it a 4. It wasn't an absolute 5 for me. So
for me, it was a 5. I've mentioned through every single category that I felt all kinds of different emotions. Mm-hmm. And when a movie can do that to me and make me feel these different things and inspire me to try to replicate that in our films, I have to give it a 5. They did their job. They got me to feel the things that they initially set out to without undercutting anything too, as is so common in modern movies. This movie nailed the emotional connection for me. Mm-hmm. 5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to see where your journey of emotional connection has come through in each of these reviews. It's been very different and not exactly what I would have guessed from movie to movie, which is fascinating. So
all depends on how the movie performs. Yeah, I go into these movies with no expectation. I try to avoid trailers even. I try to avoid when somebody's talking about a movie that might pique my interest. I try to not listen to them, to go in with almost as blind a mindset as possible so that I don't have any barriers to what the movie can try to make me feel. And this one I've seen before, but it has been years, and it did it again. The emotional connection was an absolute 5.
Mm-hmm. Story for the times.
Absolutely. Well, cool. It is that time.
Yeah.
Also, for anybody wondering, I didn't have Pride and Prejudice, but this is one of my favorite books for creatives. You should be able to see the cover. It is by Rick Rubin, so go ahead and check it out. They do have it at Maria's. That's actually where I got this. So if you're interested in this book, great read.
Gotta go buy Jane Austen next.
Yeah, right.
Read the book, see if it stirs the heartstrings in the same way.
Definitely. Well, Pride and Prejudice. We have given you some notes, even though they may be few. We have given you some notes, and your score out of 5 is 4.66833. Repeating.
Cool. 4.5 stars.
4.5 stars. An almost perfect movie. And you can see where that leans a little bit more on my side. I think this is pretty much perfect. But man, what an amazing movie. And at least for me, what a treat that we got to see it in theaters. I really, really appreciate that companies have started to do this, where they've re-released old movies in theaters.
Because they can't seem to make good movies nowadays.
Honestly, it's a great point. If they can't make money by making these new movies that are kind of slop, thank you, Marvel and Disney, then why not show the old ones? At the end of the day, you have a whole generation of movie lovers that want to see these legends in theaters. And one of those legends is Revenge of the Sith. I know that Regal is doing that in, I think, May or June.
Too bad we don't have a Regal.
I know, right? We might have to travel for that. I would love to see Revenge of the Sith in theaters because when I was young and that came out, I actually asked my parents to see it, but because of the rating,
Yep.
I was too young and they wouldn't go with me.
Yep.
I never got to see what I consider
That's the best one.
It's so good.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I want to go see that in theaters. If you guys want to see our review on that, let us know down below. Let us know what you thought of this video. Make sure to like and share, and let us know what other videos you'd like us to see.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for watching. Good night.